Hello, people. This is Mac. I hope you're enjoying your Saturday afternoon. I surely am. It's another beautiful day here. So I hope all is going well for everyone. You know, I've been seeing news pop up now and again, like yesterday and today, about the war in Ukraine. I know everybody have their opinions on that particular war, but a lot of you are influenced by the mainstream media here in America. But I suggest you take another look at what's going on over there. And the reason I think is of importance to all of us is that the U.S. is spending billions of dollars on that war over there, which is really a proxy war for the U.S. and for NATO, which includes all of the alliance of all the European countries, except for Ukraine. And Finland and Sweden, they have all but been accepted to come in since the war commenced, which Russia calls a special mobilization. If you look back in your childhood, maybe you may recall, some of you guys may, and some of you girls may recall some things you did too, where you had control over imaginary beings. Like, for instance, I can recall having a bunch of plastic soldiers, tanks, jeeps, and all the other military paraphernalia that an army troops would wear or have. I guess a battalion would have, a division would have. And I used to play with these things, and I controlled who would win the war that I set up, who would win the battle, all of these type of things. It was all make-believe, but it gave me something to do. Well, I'm going to tell you, people, if the way things have been going in this world here as I look back on it, with the wars and everything, you know that the United States has been in more wars since the Vietnam War that they had ever been in their first 200 years of history. And there's somebody controlling all of this, just as you control those doll houses, those infantrymen, plastic soldiers. There's some powers that be, I believe, that's controlling all of this. Some people look at it and say, oh, it's the Masonic Order, it's the Illuminati, Skulls and Bones, or it's the Atlantic Alliance, or it's NATO. Well, I don't know whether it's either one of these. I think there's somebody over all of those. And I think they work in concert to control the world and to control how we behave in this world as well. Because a lot of this stuff does not make any sense. If you go back and you look at the problems there between Ukraine and Russia, I'm gonna tell you, a lot of that was started by the U.S. After Reagan told Gorbachev to tear down the wall, that was the Berlin Wall, had been there since the end of World War II, divided the West Berlin to East Berlin, or there was West Germany and East Germany. And at the time, there was, I guess Russia may have been having some problems, but they decided to not, I don't think it was just at the behest of Reagan, but they decided to tear that wall down and move on. And during that time period, this was in the 80s, and during that time period, what they did, they just dissolved the Soviet Union. And it became the Russian Federation. Now, the Russian, NATO at the time, which the U.S. controlled, told the Russians that they would not encroach no further east than where they were there in Germany. But that's not true. If you go and look at a map back then and you look at a map today, you'll see that all of those nations over there, Yugoslavia, Belarus, Czech, Romania, Georgia, just to name a few, they've all become part of NATO. And what they were doing is encroaching on the backyard of Russia. And Russia didn't like that, just as you would not like for someone to encroach on your backyard and get closer and closer to you. And Russia even tried to join NATO, and they refused it. He tried to join the European Union. They refused it. That was when Putin got into power. So what happened? There was an election in Ukraine, and Russia definitely did not want Ukraine to become a part of NATO, because first of all, there are many citizens in Ukraine who speak Russian, and many who have a relationship through blood to Russia. So why would they not want to just be peaceful with Ukraine? So the Ukraine had a election, and they elected a person there that was pretty much pro Russia. But the United States didn't like that, and they got his allies not to like it either. So what they do? They executed a coup d'etat. And what that coup d'etat did was, after the person was elected, and I forget his name at this moment, they placed the neo-Nazi person in there by the name of Zelensky. He became the puppet of America and the leader of that country. And so now, what do we have, people? They kept going, and so they had the Minsk agreement back in, I believe it was 2014 or somewhere up there about. And that agreement had 13 points of things that were supposed to happen between Kyiv and Moscow. They were supposed to exchange prisoners. They were supposed to come up with other different types of points or agreements on certain things. There's supposed to be there's supposed to be peace, no weapons, firing, nothing. All of this is supposed to have been part of this Minsk agreement. But it didn't last long. Well, it lasted 8 years, to be honest with you. Because during that time, there was no peace. Kyiv continued to batter the area called Donbass, Donetsk, and Luhansk. That area, that region there, which was really mostly Russians that lived there, Russians speaking people, and they had an allegiance with Russia, but they continued to fight them, the Ukrainians, for Kyiv, the capital, where the government was located. They bombed them for the 8 years, and they killed over 14,000 citizens of that area. I mean, just total genocide, in many instances. Now, back in 2014, Crimea, which is a port city there on the Black Sea, they had a vote and where they elected to join Russia and to extricate themselves from Ukraine. And some people want to call that was illegal, that Russia caused that. But no, that's not true. These people actually had an election. The same thing that they have had here this year in the Donbass area. They had an election there, and they they wanted to be separate and independent. So, but no, United States, they didn't like that. And they kept going with what they were doing, and so Russia could not get them to agree not to become a NATO country, to get Kyiv not to become a NATO country, which they have not as of yet. So it has nothing else to do but to execute that special mobilization. Now, I'm just putting out here facts that, as I know them, not whether I'm pro this or pro that. But what strikes me as somebody's manipulating this stuff, there's a lot of things going on in our country that should be taken care of financially. And the more money we print, I mean, look at our inflation right now. Anybody that get a pension or something like that, you probably see where you may be getting Social Security 8.7% or something like that increase. But so many other people are not, because we've lost so many jobs in the auto industry and et cetera, that people are not making the wages that they used to. So some people are, now don't get me wrong, many people are, because how can you people afford these $500,000, $600,000 homes out here? But there's so many, that's only a few when you compare it to the totality of the people in these United States. But the more money they print, the more inflation goes up, and the more the dollar value right now is high, but it's going to come down because you got countries around the world are beginning to, like for instance Russia, they don't use the dollar anymore to transact their oil sales. They tell the people they got to have rubles in order for them to purchase oil from them. And some in the countries that's doing that, making these purchases, they are doing that. And all the sanctions that the U.S. and NATO put on Russia, they are really not working. It backfired. Look at what's happening over there with the energy problem in Europe today. But you got countries there in Africa that's beginning to use gold as currency, coins, as their currency of exchange, and not basing it on the dollar, but basing it on gold. And you have other countries beginning to do the same thing. Now, mind you, that's what Gaddafi was trying to put into place back with 2011, and that was his idea, with bringing the African continent together and using gold as their currency of exchange. And that's one of the reasons why the U.S. went in there, and Obama, he was the president at the time, and he the one ordered the strike and the execution of Gaddafi. Now, Bush, he the one got rid of Saddam so they could control the oil in that country. But here, they just created a lot of instability there in Libya after they struck down Gaddafi. So these things here is what's I guess the U.S. want to just control the world and be the bully all over the world. And somehow, and that's like somebody playing a game. That's what it looks like to me. They create the war there and with weapons of mass destruction there in Iraq. They go to Afghanistan. Looks like to me they went over there to protect the poppy over there, send the heroin back over here. I don't know what they were doing, but somebody out there playing these games. So right now, today, Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States here, the Biden administration, states that the administration was sending an additional $275 million in military aid to Ukraine. But I read somewhere else that it's over $400 million for critical security and defense needs in this war with Russia. Now that includes 80,000 rounds of ammunition, howitzers, and an undisclosed amount of ammunition for the high mobility artillery rocket system known as HIMARS. And it includes counter drones and air defense, along with more Humvees, generators, and other combat equipment. And they continue to support Ukraine and let Ukraine fight that proxy war over there. And what Blinken further stated said, pursuant to a delegation of authority from the president, today I'm authorizing our 25th drawdown of U.S. arms and equipment for Ukraine since August 2021. He said, now this is where the $400 million comes in. This $400 million drawdown includes additional arms, munitions, and equipment from U.S. Department of Defense inventory. This drawdown would bring the total U.S. military assistance for Ukraine to an unprecedented level of approximately $19.3 billion since the beginning of the administration. And I mean, we don't know where all this money and these ammunition is going over there. Some of it probably ended up on the black market, sold to other countries, other terrorist organizations or whatever. But here he states finally, say, we stand united with Ukraine. So now, mind you, they just sent they planning to send all these weapons and these HIMARS over there. These HIMARS now they go about 50 kilometers, twice as far as a cannon, or should I say, they go about 50 kilometers. But on top of that, these HIMARS that they are sending, take that back, the HIMARS can go 50 kilometers. And I think these howitzers go about half of that amount. But those HIMARS, they can be adjusted to go 386 miles. That's deep into Russian territory. but they claim that they are not going to do that. That is what President Biden said. They're not going to give any weapons like that to Ukraine. But now the Pentagon is saying they are more likely to support Ukrainian long-range missile attacks on Russia. This reportedly comes after a changed assessment of the war and the suffering of the Ukrainians are facing. Now, Putin has warned that the U.S. would be crossing the line if they would supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. But the Pentagon is more likely to support Ukraine's plan to launch long-range missiles on targets deep inside Russia. While the U.S. has publicly taken a stance to not encourage Ukraine to strike beyond its border, the administration has reportedly revised its assessment of the war. It is now more likely to supply Kyiv with longer-range weapons to strike deep into Russia, according to the Times. But U.S. defense sources fear that the escalation has changed since the beginning. It's different now. This is because the calculus of war has changed as a result of the suffering and brutality the Ukrainians are being subjected to by the Russians, which NATO started all of this stuff. And who controls NATO? The U.S. Now, fears that Russia would launch a tactical nuclear strike or attack a member of NATO bordering Russia have subsided among U.S. military planners, said the Times. Washington does not want to be seen encouraging Ukraine to strike in Russia. Secretary Anthony Blinken said, "We have neither encouraged nor enabled the Ukrainians to strike inside of Russia." They said they haven't enabled it because, I guess what he's saying is because they have not sent any long-range missiles there. But a separate U.S. military source says, "We're not saying to Kyiv, don't strike the Russians in Russia or Crimea. We can't tell them what to do. It's up to them how they use their weapons. But when they use the weapon we have supplied, the only thing we insist on is that the Ukrainian military conforms to the international laws of war and to the Geneva Conventions." Okay, but they're not gonna, nothing's gonna happen to them if they don't, because they control that too, you see. Now on Sunday and Monday of early this week, Ukraine is believed to have fired its own drones deep into Russian territory. One target was the Engels 2 air base in southern Russia, a base for Tu-95 and Tu-160 long-range bombers, which is nearly 400 miles from Ukraine's border. And then another explosion that day took place at an air base just southeast of Moscow. The two incidents killed and injured multiple people and damaged several planes. The Times also suggested that the U.S. could supply Ukraine with high-tech, long-range weapons, including missiles, missile launchers, and heavily armed drones. Nothing is off the table, a single U.S. defense official said, per the Times. Now, mind you, President Putin has warned that the U.S. would be crossing the line if they were to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. And Russia Foreign Minister spokesperson, a woman, Maria Zakharova, has previously told reporters if Washington decides to supply a longer-range missile to Kyiv, that it will be crossing the red line and will become a direct party to the conflict. I mean, I tell you, people, what are these chess players doing here? What are they trying to accomplish? they think that Russia is not going to make a move. They think they got them checkmated or something. Russia now, they're looking to obtain hundreds of ballistic missiles from Iran as Tehran. And that's another thing. See, they thought that Russia had used up all of their missiles. That's another. They thought they was going to run out and it's going to end the conflict, something like that. But just as they are supplying, Russia has other alternatives. They can't figure out how Russia are getting all these different weapons. Right now, they haven't found any indication that any are from Iran. But they can't. But there's most of the weapons, the debris that they've gotten from where these missiles have exploded, they have been like from Russia. So they figure now that Russia must have gotten a lot of microchips, stocked up a long time on their microchips, or someone is supplying them with the microchips and they're still manufacturing these missiles. But now, Russia, they are claiming, this is U.S. claiming this, not Russia, I didn't say this. UK defense official warned Saturday that Russia is looking to attain hundreds of ballistic missiles from Iran as Tehran become one of Moscow's top military backers. Iran first faced international earlier this year when the White House announced that it had knowledge Tehran would be gifting Russia hundreds of drones as Moscow supplies showed signs of dwindling less than 6 months into its war in Ukraine. But Tehran has since, they say, taken even bolder steps, sending other missiles units and agreeing last month to streamline Russia's ability to develop Iranian drones on its own turf for use in Ukraine. Well, if U.S. gonna go over to, I read the other day, U.S. is going over to South Korea to buy HIMARS missiles from them. And putting South Korea, because South Korea still want to be friendly with Russia. But they understand, they just found out, they were asked, did they know that the U.S. are going to use these missiles to send to Ukraine? Apparently they didn't know. And they got them a little shaky there. But they're afraid that if Russia succeeds in bringing a large number of Iranian ballistic missiles into service, it will likely use them to continue and expand its campaign of strikes against Ukraine's critical national infrastructure, the ministry warned. Now, I'm gonna tell you, this is unreal as to how these things are going right now, because the U.S. and its allies continue to send weapons to Ukraine, and Russia is continuing to build up too. So now they are saying, at first they were saying they would not give the okay to Ukraine to strike Russia, strike Moscow, St. Petersburg, or whatever other cities in that area, to strike the infrastructure or the military bases there in Ukraine. But this is, in Russia, but this is really happening now. Now, Merkel, she was the former prime minister, chancellor of Germany. Her name is Angela Merkel. Now, Putin said he was surprised and disappointed when she confessed that the purpose of the Minsk, remember I spoke about the Minsk agreement earlier, that the purpose of the Minsk peace agreements was to buy time for Ukraine. However, he added, that it justified Moscow's military operation against Kyiv. Their point was only to load up Ukraine with weapons and prepare for hostilities. We see that, honestly, we may have realized that too late, and maybe should have started all this sooner, Putin said. While he knew that Ukraine did not intend to implement the deal, he said, I thought other participants in that process were honest. Turns out they too were deceiving us. He said, how do you negotiate with trust at zero? He said, the real question now is whether negotiations about anything with them make us think who we're dealing with. There's no trust. And Putin was asked about his earlier statement that the military operation might be a long process. He explained that he was actually referring to the resolution of the conflict in Ukraine. The special military operation is proceeding apace. Everything is stable. There are no questions or problems with it today, he said. Resolving the whole situation will probably not be easy and will take some time. But one way or the other, all participants in this process will have to agree with the realities that are taking shape on the ground. Now, this is what I'm afraid that thing's gonna come up here. Russia's gonna become highly, perturbed when these long-range missiles start to coming into Russia and killing the citizens. Now, you remember Russia did that special mobilization operation to go over there to keep Kyiv from continuing to batter the Donbass area and the Crimea area. It was killing a lot of people. They killed over 14,000 people during that 8-year period. And that's why they went in there with their mobilization, also to keep them from becoming a NATO country right on their doorstep, where they could be placed missiles there. But now if they start to strike in there, Russia may do something really insane to, I won't say protect, because nothing will be protected. First of all, the U.S. has a long doctrine of launching a disarming attack against command and control systems, for which they developed cruise missiles that the Soviet Union lacked. Now, Russia has hypersonic missiles that are more modern and even more effective. So Putin is thinking, so perhaps, and I quote, we should think about adopting the development and ideas of our American partners when it comes to ensuring security. He goes on to say that now, while the U.S. doctrine envisions a preemptive nuclear strike, Russia's doctrine is about retaliation. Now, if the Russian early warning system detects a missile attack, and I quote, hundreds of our missiles will fly and it will be impossible to stop them. While some attacking missiles will strike Russia, nothing will remain of the enemy. And that is how nuclear deterrence works, he explained. Now, people, I'm just wondering here, are we on the cups of a nuclear war here, World War III? And who's pushing it? I mean, from what I can see here, the U.S. and its NATO allies are pushing for this. Or is this just a game being played by that master gamer that sits above all these nations right here? is he the one that's pushing these buttons and playing this game out. But no one does anything unless he or she or they tell them to. We'll keep you posted as time goes on and what's going on. But I would tell you, each of you, to be vigilant. Get your house in order. Get on your knees. Pray. Ask God for forgiveness. Because this world could be coming to an end. I hope not. But we never know. We know in Revelations, it said this world will be destroyed by fire the next time. Before water. I think you should go and read Revelation. Have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon.